Welcome, Avi.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you served as president and CEO of the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies from 2000 to 2020. Looking back, what was your proudest moment with this organization?
Well, look, I've always been passionate about working for the Jewish community. Prior to that organization, I'd worked for UJ Federation. And I'd always thought that I wanted to go into academia. And in a way, I did, except informally. When I started with the Jewish community, I realized that this was an incredible way to actually make a difference, to actually see that your action can resonate within the community, can have an impact, and that you could see the needle actually moving. And that changed really my trajectory of what I wanted to do earlier on, because I could have a social impact. And so, having been born in Israel, having been raised in a proud Israeli Jewish home, having a father that served in the Israeli military and family that served in the Israeli military, helping the Jewish community, advocating for Israel has always been critical for me.
Avi, what does the world misunderstand most about Israel?
Israel is a misunderstood country. There's absolutely no question about it. And sometimes we expect people to understand Israel, but we have to ask ourselves, do we understand Somalia as an example, or Sudan as an example? Many of us don't, because these are faraway places. They're not necessarily in our minds, and you have to really understand the context and the history. And so you find that most people don't understand Israel, and we can't blame them. Our job is to educate. And so the problem is that they see various images in the media that might be anti-Israel. They see rockets flying. They see, terrorist attacks, and that is their conception of Israel. But when you're on the ground in Israel, and I take lots of, especially non-Jewish groups and non-Jewish leaders to Israel, they are completely overwhelmed and flabbergasted by the incredible difference between what their perception was and what the reality is. And that is really how Israel is misunderstood. And this is why we have to get them to Israel. The other aspect that people completely misunderstand Israel is the indigenous right of the Jewish people to be on that land. And one of the things that I do when I land with a non-Jewish group in Israel, and I go to Jerusalem, I take them to Jerusalem. Before I do anything else, I take them to the Israel Museum. Why the Israel Museum? Because what I want to show them is one simple thing. We don't even tour the museum. I just take them for one simple thing, and that is to see the Dead Sea Scrolls. Why the Dead Sea Scrolls? Because I say to them, well, do you have any question at all in your mind that the First Nations people of Canada, as an example, lived on the land before anyone else? Everyone, of course, says, no. Well, why don't you? Well, of course, we know they exist. Number one, we see them. Number two is there's artifacts in the ground. And of course, it's a known fact that they've been here on this land forever. And so I said, so the same thing applies for the Jewish people in Israel. You look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can read them in ancient Hebrew and Aramaic. You can read them. I stand there and I read them to them. I say, this is over 2,000 years found on this land. They then are able to, to debunk the myths of, delegitimization of the Jewish people on the land, calling Jews colonizers or settlers, and so forth. They're able to see the propaganda once they understand and they see the factual evidence on the ground of our existence. We have to push back against that. We have to educate, and we have to make people understand that we have a right to be on that land, more so or just as much as anyone else. And that is what I believe the best the best thing we can do in terms of challenging misunderstanding against Israel.
What is at the root of Jew hatred?
You know, Susan, that's the toughest question for people like myself who are fighting it every single day. We're constantly asking, what is the root? What is the cause? It's a question that's been asked for millennia. Theodore Herzl asked the same question. So there isn't one single answer. There's multiple answers. Unfortunately, some of those answers lie in Christian tradition, religious tradition, where Jews were blamed for the murder of Jesus, deicide, and that caused for nearly 2,000 years pogroms and inquisitions against the Jews, and created various mythologies like the blood libel or the poisoning of wells and so forth. And so there is this perpetuation of anti-Semitism that has been embedded in religion and then taken on by other groups. And today what we're seeing with respect to anti-Semitism is really that we're in the middle of a massive fight that's coming at us. There's the left-wing academic anti-Semitism, I call it, that is hostile to Israel. And some of us call it the new anti-Semitism because Israel's only been around now for 75 years. And of course that there is the old anti-Semitism, which is looked at as that white supremacist ideology that comes from Nazism, and Nazism applied it from that ancient religious Christian tradition to an extent. And then unfortunately we're also seeing anti-Semitism from Islamists in the Muslim world, and that is building up from, as an example, the Al-Quds Day here in Toronto and around the world. That is actually grounded in Iran that invented it. And so what we are seeing is this incredible, spectacular method of anti-Semitism that is actually more pervasive than even in ancient times. The good news is that we are stronger today as a Jewish world than we ever have been. The good news is that we have the state of Israel, which sadly many Jews still don't get, that we have the state of Israel. Think about this. A Jew living 80 years ago, 90 years ago in Europe with the walls closing in, or on the MS St. Louis trying to get into Canada and Cuba and America, fleeing the Nazis. What was going on in their mind? They had nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. Today we have the state of Israel, and that is the answer to anti-Semitism.
Avi, you've been referred to as a master of fostering public dialogue, perhaps the best in Canada. How receptive has the Trudeau government been in engaging in dialogue and strategy in fighting anti-Semitism?
Look, I think dialogue is the most important thing, particularly interfaith dialogue, and trying to build a big tent. And that's really what I've always believed in. I don't think the answer is within the Jewish community. I think the answer is in the broader community and creating alliances and bringing together people. And so what I've done is I've just created a massive network actually outside of the Jewish community, outside the so-called proverbial shtetl, and trying to build that network. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of issues concerning anti-Semitism in Ottawa. We saw it happen this past summer with Heritage Canada funding someone who unfortunately was a promoter or purveyor of anti-Semitism. and it was kind of brushed under the carpet and really not addressed. How did it happen? How did money flow there? Who was there? Who allowed this to happen? And so this, of course, created a lot of concern within the Jewish community. And the Jewish community is generally respectful and generally doesn't like to make too many waves. The truth of the matter is that it's time for us to speak out. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We are the ones who are being victimized. We are the ones who are on the top of the list of every police agency when it comes to hate crimes. And yet, we are also the ones who have been here 250 years, contributing to Canadian society, to the fabric. You look at institutions, universities, and hospitals. Jewish people have put their philanthropy first to help everybody, not just within the Jewish community. So we're owed. We're owed that kind of respect in this country. We're also owed, from a legal point of view, protection for that kind of victimization. And so all of us should be concerned when we see anti-Semitism on the street, when we see parades on our street where protesters, are calling to what?
I'm just thinking Roger Waters comes to my mind right away.
Yes.
I mean, the co-founder of Pink Floyd, the musician band, dressing up as a Nazi.
Yes.
And, where is the humanity here?
Yeah, where is the humanity? And there's a Pink Floyd exhibit that is happening now at the Canadian National Exhibition. I've spoken out. I've actually done more than speaking out against it. Unfortunately, while Pink Floyd itself doesn't have anything to do with Roger Waters, unfortunately, he is manifested in that exhibit, and so he's given credence. And so when someone like him dresses up like a Nazi, and then there's an exhibit here in Toronto that essentially venerates him and gives him credibility, what message does that send to society, to our youth and to our adults, that it's fine, that it's permissible? If he would to dress up like anyone else, think of any other group, or do anything else, that would not be tolerated for 3 seconds, yet it's tolerated against the Jewish community. And so we need to start standing up for ourselves, and we need to build bridges with others to help and to understand.
Well, Avi, thank you so much. First of all, for all that you do, I applaud you, and for being our guest here today.
Thank you very much
Jewish
for having
TV.
me.